Whoa. Yes. Peace, blessing, love, and light. It's your girl, Divinely Guided D. And I'm back. So it's something about this man that just always gets me motivated to come back here and just get back on this mic. So good old TP came out with Straw, right? Um Real quick. As you can see, I'm in a different location. And yes, that was a cat. So you might be hearing a lot of that going on. So I just wanted to acknowledge that real quick. But anywho, back to what I was saying. So good old TP, Tyler Perry, he came out with Straw, starring Taraji P. Henson. The movie came out on Netflix, and it was released not that long ago. Let me see. June 6th, 2025. So, real quick, the overview of what the movie is about. A single mother navigates a series of unfortunate events, leading her down an unforeseen path where she becomes embroiled in a situation she never envisioned, finding herself at the center of suspicion in an indifferent world. That's what it says on this review. But really, it was, I'm gonna break it down because I know a few of you probably already seen this, and this is a spoiler. So if you don't want to um the movie to be spoiled for you, you can go watch it and come back. But anywho, this this image. Wait, let me see. Wait, that way. Yes, there it is. So this image is of the character Janaya, played by Taraji, and basically it's a symbolism of what this movie is, which is when it rains, it really does pour. Okay, because it seemed like that's what just kept going on for this young lady. Now, before I really get um really deep into the plot of the movie and everything that happened, I was hesitant, if I'm being honest, about watching this movie because at this point most of us know that if you are watching a Tyler Perry film, then you're watching struggle, right? And the struggle is being experienced mainly by a black woman, African American woman, a sister, insert, you know, synonym there. And there's a lot of people who criticize his films, me included. And it's something about constantly seeing Taraji playing these type of roles that I'm just at this point I know what to expect. I'm not as interested. This was my thought process. But there was a curiosity where I was like, okay, I, I'm curious about what's gonna happen. I also like majority of Taraji's work. I think that she's a great actress. I think that she's also put in a lot of work to get here, from starring in as an extra on Sister Sister to being on Baby Boy to then being a lead in Empire, and we see where she is today, right? When I saw Taraji um, at the beginning of this movie, it made me think of Acrimony. And if you heard what I said about Acrimony, then you would know that I didn't feel much of sympathy for her character then. I forgot her name in that film. And a part of me felt that way as well when I was watching Straw. And it made me want to examine my own biases. And I said, you know what? Why do I feel this way? Right. Um, I will say that Tyler Perry creates films that can trigger someone to go bonkers. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's why he is confident when he says he knows who his audience is, because there's a lot of people who watch his work who are not healed. Therefore, it's like a repetitive cycle of the trauma that has been experienced already. And for me, there are certain things that I have experienced before, and I'm also in the mental health field. And so, knowing what I know, I understand that we have to be mindful of what we consume, especially when it comes to the media. We have so much access to different places in the internet, in that realm, and you never know where you're going to end up, because there's an audience for basically everything. And I mean literally everything that I can't even really think of, but there's um someone interested in whatever that is, you know. And so prior to me doing my own review, I did see that there have been some mixed reviews where there are some people that are just like, again, TP, another struggle story. And then there are other people that are like, you know what, you already know what to expect. And not only that, but he speaks for the voiceless. He speaks for you know, people who really do experience what seems to be a bad streak of luck, of bad luck, you know. So we have this character Janaya, who she has a daughter that she has to assist to get ready for school. We see that she's a single mother. She's living in a home that she lives in an impoverished area with her child, beautiful baby girl. I believe she is 8 or 7. And so Janaya works at a supermarket, and this supermarket is ran by a man who doesn't respect her. And just so I could be a little bit more helpful with this review, I'm gonna look for the cast, because it had a decent cameo. We know Sherry Shepherd was there. She was a the bank manager. Tiana Taylor, she was a negotiator for the police department. Um, Rockman Dunbar, he played in Soul Food as Maxine's husband. He was the captain, the one who was in charge of Tiana. And let me see, it's a cast. So I'm gonna go to the IMDb. Okay, perfect. So Taraji P. Henson plays Janaya Wilkinson. Sherry Shepherd is Nicole. Tiana Taylor plays Detective Kay Raymond. Oh, we also had a small cameo from Sinbad. So for those who don't know, Sinbad is a comedian. He was well known way back 80s, 90s. He was the original Shazam, and he was in a different world. So he is well known, right? And he played, I believe, this homeless man, because I wasn't sure if he was just, if he lived in the building, or you know, anyway. So Sinbad happened to be someone that Janaya, who's Taraji's character, she would sometimes give some change when she would leave. So we saw that at the beginning, when after she got her daughter ready for school, they head downstairs. She gives him a little bit of change. As I mentioned earlier, Rockman Dunbar, he plays Chief Wilson. We have Tessa George, which is the bank teller, and this person ends up being the the person who calls who presses the button. She's played by Ashley Versher. I hope I said that right. Mike Merrill, he plays Detective Grimes. I've seen him before. I can't think of a film. Glenn Turman, he was also in a different world as well. He played Richard, and he's the one that was Taraji's boss. So Richard, he was just this disrespectful, older man, grumpy. I felt like his role was exaggerated. He was just like, "Where you going?" and like, "Get your behind," I'm gonna keep it cute, but he was just not a nice guy, and it just seemed like he lacked a lot of compassion for her. Um, we also have this older lady named Diva Tyler, um, and she played Isabella. So, okay. So back to what I was saying about Glenn Turnman's character Richard. So we see that um, after Taraji drops her daughter off to school, she goes to work at the supermarket. Unfortunately, somebody throws a drink in her face because I guess she couldn't provide a certain type of service because I guess the I don't remember too much, but there was something that she couldn't do for the client, and I believe that person was in the wrong anyway. So then, because that person was upset, they disrespected her in that way. Um, Fast forward, this um, Janiyah gets a call from the school, and apparently she has to go to the school. She asks for a break. Richard is just like no, and basically she he gives her 30 minutes, and she stops by the bank for a little bit, then goes to the school. Apparently, they took her daughter. Um, but prior to that, I'm missing a part because this part is going to be important. Earlier, before she got to work, there was this man that tailgated her. This man ends up being a white policeman who threatens her, says he's going to kill her. Um, so basically, it was just a traumatizing morning for her. So yeah, back to the school. They take her daughter away. And earlier, while she's bathing her child, who we know is who we find out has an ailment, she gets seizures. So she needed $40 for lunch. She's unable to do that. That's part of the reason why she asked for the break to go to the school and and drop that off so that her daughter is able to not look like her mother is unable to provide, right? So we see that CPS takes her child. It's just a lot that happened in the first 17 minutes, which made me want to turn off the TV, which I did. I paused I was over it. I paused the film, and my husband had to basically nudge me to continue. He was like he's one of those individuals who knows what to expect from a TP film, so he's just like, why even bother, right? But me, because of research purposes, I was like, let me give it a shot, right? But it just turns out it was a waste of a good 17 minutes. But then I was like, okay, let me get back on the horse. And I continue watching. And I was just over it when they took her child. I was just like, why does everything seem to be exaggerated? It's like if she's poor, she really, really has to be poor. If she's, being disrespected, it has to really go to hell. Like I just, but I watched someone else's review and they said, they felt that way too until they spoke to a friend, and that friend said that the film hit close to home, right? So then as I'm doing this review, I'm also being mindful that there are people that live this type of reality, you know meaning that it just seems like it's one thing after another. And so I continue watching the film. She ends up going back to work. She ends up getting fired. Um, so it's just a mess. She loses a car earlier when she had that interaction with the male cop. So that was already a thing. She loses her daughter. She tried to get her check from Richard. And while that was happening, the store ends up getting robbed. And Janiyah had her name tag still on his shirt. And one of the robbers read her name. But of course, Richard was not having that. Richard was definitely not having that. He did not believe that at all. He ends up calling the cops. So he mentions Janiyah's name, so they already know who he suspects is the one that had some involvement with the robbery at the supermarket. Janiyah ends up shooting him. A mess. Then after she shoots him, she ends up across the way at the bank. So if you're familiar with certain structures like small malls where you may have like, especially like places like in the South or like suburban areas, because we have that in some places here in New York as well, where you may have like a let's say like a laundromat, a bank, a supermarket. They're like in a little complex. So anyway, that's kind of how it is. So she's able to go across the way to the bank. She tries to go cash the check, and that ends up being a whole disaster because she tries to cash a check, and Tessa, who's the one that I mentioned earlier, played by Versher, um Tessa ends up getting Taraji's character upset Janiyah because it's kind of like she can't cash a check because I guess Janiyah doesn't have her ID or something like that. And so, but Janiyah's like, you guys know me, you know me here. Like she comes often with a child, and she works right there in the supermarket that's kind of adjacent, right? But Tessa's just like, no, that's not the policy. And so Janiyah pulls out the gun, and I want to get the exact number of the check. I believe it was 521 or $571. Let me see. Janiyah's check. Um, let me see. It's not funny because this is somebody's reality, but it's just like, anyway, it's just a TP film, right? So Janiyah, her check was for $521. Janiyah was not trying to rob the bank, but Tessa was definitely getting on her nerves because she wasn't moving fast enough, right? So then Cherry Shepherd's character comes around the way, and by this time though, she also finds out that she's being robbed because Tessa had pressed the button. Um just a hot mess. So anyway, fast forward. Um she's still trying to just cash this $521. We see that there's people on the line that are still in the bank. They get holed up for a while. I'm just gonna fast forward this a bit. Somehow, you know, Janiyah sees the cop that she had the interaction with earlier, as well as the partner um, this other female cop who ended up then handling the situation and becoming basically like a mediator between not really a mediator. She took over what was the she took over instead of just letting the male cop still continue to demonstrate aggression towards Janiyah. So at that point, she was kind of like her saving grace, even though she's the reason why Janiyah doesn't have a car. That cop had also told his colleague, make her suffer, So Janiyah was definitely traumatized because she did not want to get out of the bank. She had this gun. She also had her child's science project with her, which seemed to be a bomb. So at this point, the people in the bank are thinking that she has a bomb in her bag, but it's really just a science project, and it did look like a bomb. I don't know what kind of curriculum her child was being taught at her school, but for a 7, 8 year old, I think that was highly inappropriate. But who am I, right? I'm just a mother to an 8 year old who would question that type of thing. Anyway, so I will say that the part that I really appreciated the most when it came to this film is the part where another bank teller, not Tessa, because Tessa, honestly, she was a bit of a snob. She lacked compassion, and she reminds me of a lot of people that are just like, well, whatever, like pull yourself by the bootstrap, or like, to each his own. Like she could just feel so indifferent and unbothered with anything that's going on outside of her world, outside of her bubble. She gave me that, right? But there's other people that are in the bank, such as another teller who ends up pulling out her phone to record. And by this time, Tiana Taylor, Rockman Dunbar, those characters, the police, the local police had already started to engage with Janiyah. Let me change this. This image is just anyway. I'm move it there. So they had already interacted with Janiyah, and so after the teller starts live streaming what was going on inside the bank, Janiyah doesn't know what's going on because the phone has been placed at a certain angle, and Janiyah's in her own little world trying to figure out how to get herself out of the situation because all she wanted was $521 that she worked for, right? So everybody can see and hear what's going on inside the bank, and we find out that she was tailgated earlier that morning by the police officer. We hear that, she has a sick daughter. We hear her story, right? And one thing Tyler Perry is good at is definitely pulling on your heartstrings. When I think of What's Done in the Dark, that's a play that he had. When I think of Medea's Family Reunion, where he had the monologue from Maya Angelou, I believe, yeah, it was Maya Angelou by the Elders, and Cicely Tyson, and then having this monologue by Janiyah as well, and you're able to feel the pain. You're able to um put yourself in her shoes, and I can say a lot about TP, and I play around like, he's a gift that keeps on giving because he is. But that man can make you feel things through a screen, and Taraji was the perfect actress to do this, I would say. um we also had a juxtaposition of characters because you have Janiyah, where she's still struggling. She's still in the darkness, right? Trying to figure out what to do with her life. It's like she has no voice. She feels so it's like she's fragile, very fragile. Every little thing makes her jump. And if I'm being honest with you, if you are unhealed, then you will deny that you've ever experienced that, if you have, you know. And if I'm being honest, there was a time in my life where I felt so fragile. And I will say this. It's okay to watch this and reflect and see how far you've come. But it's also important that you are aware that there may be some triggers that are still dormant and subconsciously may be triggered when you're watching such a traumatic film like this. And I was talking to my husband prior to me recording this, and I asked him for permission to discuss a little bit about what happened with us a little bit after I watched this film. I believe I watched this like a week ago. And I knew from the trailer that it was already going to be a lot. I didn't want to watch the trailer, but I knew that my spirit was curious enough to see what was going on with this film. I mentioned earlier in this review that after like 15 to 17 minutes of the movie, I shut off the film. My husband then was like, you know what, you wanted to watch this, right? So go ahead. So I turned it back on and I said, you know, I watched it. So I ended up obviously finishing the film, or I wouldn't be making the review. He and I were in a great space personally, you know, prior to watching that. But it seemed as if after, it was just like I felt a little irritable. And there was a part in the film where Janai is like, you know, she doesn't have anybody, or, you know, it was one of those where you could feel the emptiness, the loneliness, where it's just like it's me against the world. And as someone who has been through hella trauma, you know, and I'm gonna do separate story times as I feel fit. But as someone who has experienced so much abuse and other traumatic experiences, I think that I had some triggers of my own that were dormant that I didn't really realize, you know. And I have a husband who is very he don't play about me or anybody that he cares about. So he is strong in that regard, you know, stern as well. And but I'm also strong and tough because of the circumstances that I've experienced. So I don't know, it was like the clash of the titans that was going on, but it was a little ugly, you know what I'm saying? And I felt like it was kind of like unknown territory with him, but it felt like it was I was back in my past. And by that I mean having to feel like it was me against the world. Like, let's say Janai felt, and feeling as if it was just one thing after another that was just happening, you know? But then I had to meditate. And this is where the healed part of me understands that I had to separate my present energy, who I am today, from who I was then, and from who this character from this film is. Because at the end of the day, I'm just watching a movie, or am I? Right. And this is where, as a spiritual person, you have to be mindful of what you're consuming, know how to take off certain energies and get rid of them at the end of whatever interaction you're having. I know there are some people who do spiritual work on a daily, and they also have practices of where they have to cleanse themselves right after dealing with people with heavy trauma, heavy spiritual loads. And I think that this film definitely casted some type of heaviness in my household. So I will repeat again, please be mindful of, some of the content that you are consuming, and understand that these things may have a short term and possibly a long lasting effect if you are not healed, because it's so easy to say, you know what, Tyler Perry is making a film that is so relatable, so F all of you guys because you just don't get it. Those are people who I think may still be in that same loop, that same cycle. They're still living the Janaya life, you know? Um, and I mentioned there's a juxtaposition in character, right? And I felt like the character who juxtaposed Taraji's is Tiana Taylor. And she played, let me get her name again, Detective Kay Raymond. She mentioned when to after Taraji expressed what she was going through in her hardship as a single mother, Detective K then shows empathy by sharing her story with Janaya and letting her know, hey, I've been through something similar. I am a single mother. Let me cast put her up. Um, Gotta be mindful now because I had a strike the first time. Okay, let me share. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Hmm. Okay. Hey, baby. That's the cat. Okay. So we see Tiana right here. So she played Detective Kay Raymond, and so she shares her story with Janaya. Janaya is able to see she's not, alone in the world. There's another woman who has experienced something similar. However, she's in a different space, right? And even though she's still going through whatever she's personally going through, you could see that there's a sense of perseverance, a different ambition, and less of a victim state in comparison to Janaya. I really, really enjoyed the part where the people showed up outside of that bank and they were riding for her. I'm not gonna lie, that part made me tear up because as a sister myself, you don't always see that. The community is often criticized a lot, and it seems as if we are expected to is a different bar. And you've heard it throughout, history where it's like, people would say we have to work twice as hard, you know, and that's really how it feels sometimes. Like we really have to work twice as hard because nobody's coming to rescue. If you're not the typical phenotype, if you don't come from certain places, then you're not going to be seen as someone worth saving and defending. So to see that there was a whole mob outside and to see Sherry Shepherd's character as well, I felt like she did a phenomenal job providing not only like a sisterhood but a maternal um, figure as well. And it seems like we're missing that. We're missing the connection with our elders. Um, and I don't think family is I don't think that the family unit is really as protected and nurtured as much as it should be. And we're seeing the effects of it. And I think that the pandemic as well played a role in that, because before there was more a sense of a community, right? But then with the pandemic, it created this separation where it's like, I don't know what you have. First it was like, okay, you may have COVID, you may not. You're not priority, you're an associate, so it's like you don't always know where you stand, you don't always know who's gonna come and actually genuinely be there. So to see the camaraderie that occurred in this film, I would give TP a good 8.5 in that regard. As far as trauma would be a 10 out of 10, because that man know how to traumatize us. Rushing the film, he always seems to rush a film, and I think they filmed in 4 days. So Roger already said that she's gonna stand with him because he's the man that basically pays her and calls her when no one else calls. So I've given up already on that aspect. But psychologically, I would say that you have to be in a good and healthy space to watch this type of film. It's the only way that you will be able to watch it without getting lost, right? And really quickly, I am aware that at the time that I am recording this, that there have been some allegations regarding Mr. TP and possible sexual harassment in the workplace by, I believe his name is Derek Dixon, who was on the Oval, and another one of his shows that I can't think of right now is the religious one. But anywho, when it comes to that case, I'm still learning about what actually may have or may not occurred. I understand that there's a series of text messages as well. I'm going to do a separate video on that. But I do believe that a lot of what Tyler Perry does and put out has to do with unhealed trauma. He speaks very well. He knows how to convey emotion and struggle, right? And evoke emotion, excuse me. But I do not believe that he is as healed as he thinks he is. And I'm going to leave it at that. And with that being said, your girl is here to stay.